facility, otherwise GFSI schemes. This webinar will outline the basic steps involved in successfully implementing the chosen GFSI standard, of course in your organization, and also to avoid some of the common pitfalls. Like any other webinar, the intent is to provide some basic information on the topic, thus helping you or helping people to kindle their interest and explore the subject matter further. Well, my name is Rama and I'm the Technical Program Director for Perry Johnson Registrar Food Safety, Inc. This is a certification body located in Troy, Michigan. We certify food processing companies and also farms to the various GFSI recognized food safety standards, both nationally and internationally. Well, as I mentioned to you just a while ago, the intent is to kindle your interest and help you to explore it further. This webinar is not going to provide any suggestion or step-by-step process for the implementation of the GFSI standard. That becomes consultative. Not only that, I do not have, or rather we do not have the time to go through the details actually, okay? This is just a general overview of how it can be managed through the project management approach. I have divided the contents of this webinar into 4 sections as shown on this slide. Section A will introduce you to both private and regulatory food safety standards. I'm sure you are familiar with the common GFSI standards such as SGF, BRC, and FSSC, but I'm going to repeat this for the benefit of others who are totally new to the subject or totally new to this type of certification, intending to implement the GFSI standard in their organization. In Section B, I will explain how to implement the chosen GFSI food safety standard as a project. A project management approach to GFSI certification is, of course, ideal and will lead to better results. This section will explain how it can be achieved through the various phases of project management, such as project initiation, project implementation, project evaluation, and project closure. Section C will outline some of the common pitfalls in the implementation of the food safety management system standard. As you know, every project is unique and has unique problems. I will explain what the common pitfalls are as far as this project is concerned. This might help you in avoiding those traps in the successful implementation of the project. And I would like to mention that communication during or after audit is not one-way traffic. As auditors, you have your rights. You can exercise your rights. And this is what I intend in explaining in Section D. Section A, this is going to introduce you to private and regulatory food safety standards. Consumers all over the globe are increasingly concerned about food safety. It's a hot topic every day. Food safety is a shared responsibility of many entities, such as producers, processors, distributors, retailers, regulatory bodies, and consumers, of course. Even consumers have their responsibilities too. The concept is easy to understand, but there are a number of variables in the supply chain that can affect the safety of food. This is what I call supply chain. Consumers are increasingly concerned about farm practices. For instance, use of antibiotics and growth hormones in livestock. It's heavily used these days, and consumers are really concerned about these practices, or even pesticide residues in crops and animals. Similarly, you have bacteriological contamination in raw materials and finished products, poor hygiene, animal diseases, food additives, preservatives, etc. All these things can have an impact on safety of food. Okay. Now let's see the responsibilities of the government, basically regulatory bodies. There is a general misconception that regulatory bodies are primarily responsible for ensuring safety of produced or processed food. The responsibilities of regulatory bodies include, say, protecting consumers from illness or injury caused by food, providing assurance to the public that food is suitable for consumption, providing health education program to communicate principles of hygiene, and also maintaining confidence in internationally traded foods. Now, I would like to say something about Codex Alimentarius Commission. While the Codex Alimentarius Commission, this is a World Health Organization body, this provides guidelines for food safety, but it is the responsibility of the individual regulatory bodies, for example, US FDA, to go through the guidelines and draft rules and regulations for their country. It is this approach that becomes a hurdle to import and export food products. Okay. Recently, FDA has come up with FSMA, for instance. Okay. A lot of countries export products into the United States. This is some sort of a hurdle to those countries. Okay. Now let's move on to the next slide. This talks about the responsibilities of the industry. The responsibility of manufacturers towards safety of the products they manufacture cannot be overemphasized. Okay. Many of the food safety incidents actually arise at this level. Manufacturers' responsibility include providing food that is safe. They have to make sure the food they produce is safe and also suitable for consumption. And also they will have to maintain confidence in internationally traded foods. If they are exporting or importing, they have to make sure that food is safe. And also they will have to ensure that consumers have clear and easily understood product information. Basically, they will have to make sure the label information is straightforward and not confusing. Now, what is the responsibility of consumers? Consumers have specific responsibilities towards food safety. They are expected to follow the relevant instructions provided on labels and also apply appropriate food hygiene measures at their end. Okay? They too have some responsibilities. Now let me talk about private certification schemes. Private certification schemes are formal documented systems that are administered by the private sector. These schemes prescribe methods to obtain specific objectives and methods to certification. These schemes are generally incorporated into the supply chain contract where it becomes a contractual requirement. Okay, basically, this is driven by the market force. By implementing certification schemes, GFSI certification schemes, for example, companies will be able to manage their food safety hazards, also lower their cost of production, will be able to comply with regulatory requirements, and finally reduce their liability because they are operating with good systems in place. They will be able to reduce liability and, of course, retain consumer loyalty. I'm trying to compare private certification schemes with regulatory requirements. It's quite unlikely private certification schemes will ever replace regulatory standards. This is for obvious reasons, because they have different roles to play. Private certification schemes can play a role in achieving regulatory objectives, provided they're effective, credible, and aligned with policy objectives of government agencies. While the regulatory oversight cannot be replaced by these schemes, there is a serious move in North America and elsewhere to consider private schemes to be used as a factor within a risk-based framework. Even government regulatory bodies have started looking into private sector schemes. Several regulatory authorities such as US FDA, UK Food Safety Authority, etc., have already started incorporating the use of these private sector schemes into their regulatory oversight framework. What I mean by that is previously the regulatory bodies were totally averse to private sector schemes, but now these days there has been some flexibility. These agencies, these regulatory bodies have started looking into such schemes because of their credibility. Many of you are familiar with the benefits of third-party certification. I'm just going to repeat for the benefit of those who are going to implement the schemes for the first time. Third-party certifications provide compliance with generic government requirements. They will help you to meet the regulatory objectives, regulatory requirements. Also, these schemes, third-party certification schemes, they have the benefit of transparency because it's done by a third party, and aims at continuous improvement because all these standards or schemes, GFSI schemes for instance, they stipulate certain requirements for continuous improvement. One major benefit is the avoidance of duplication of audits. Certification to GFSI benchmark standards, in fact, provides substantial economic benefits through the avoidance of duplicate audits, both domestically and internationally. Companies that obtain third-party certifications have greater opportunities with the buying community because of the confidence on the various GFSI schemes, thus providing greater market access for their products. So these are some of the benefits. Again, this is for the benefit of those that are planning to implement GFSI schemes. I would like to just give some idea about GFSI. All the time we have been talking about GFSI, but I'm just going to give some basic information about GFSI. The Global Food Safety Initiative, the acronym is GFSI, is a result of collaboration between some of the world's leading food safety experts from retailers, manufacturers, and food service companies. And also some service providers active in the food supply chain. In the first few slides, I explained what a food supply chain will look like from farm to distribution. GFSI has got some objectives. These are, I'm just going to give you some 4 objectives. Number 1, to reduce food safety risks by delivering equivalence and convergence between different management system standards, all related to food safety. To manage cost in the global food system by eliminating redundancy. We just talked about avoiding duplication of audits. Okay. Number 3, to develop competencies and capacity building in food safety to create consistent, effective global food systems, actually. Qualifying auditors, prescribing competency requirements, qualification requirements for food safety auditors. That is also one of the GFSI objectives. Okay. Also provide a unique international stakeholder platform for collaboration, knowledge exchange, and networking for better communication between different entities. So prior to the creation of GFSI was created sometime in 2000. There was a proliferation of demands for audits, primarily from major buyers, major retailers, such as supermarkets, within the food supply chain. They all had different requirements, and suppliers were totally confused. Not only that, they had to incur huge costs on audits because they wanted to supply to big retailers. Then GFSI proposed a method by which it would be possible to take a harmonized approach to recognize the various food safety standards that existed at that time. Okay. How was it done? First, by drawing up a set of food safety criteria to be incorporated into the various food safety standards. So this process is called harmonization. And by establishing common procedures for accreditation and certification bodies, okay, for verifying the implementation of these standards. First, they wanted to harmonize the various food safety standards that existed. Okay. They prescribed some criteria for harmonization. And second, they also prescribed criteria for accreditation and certification bodies, because the certification body is the one that certifies companies. So this approach should allow a supplier in any country to commission a single audit, whether the supplier is in the United States, whether the supplier is in China, Japan, elsewhere. They will have a harmonized standard to implement, and a harmonized standard, the same standard, is used to audit those facilities. Now, what are those standards? GFSI recognizes 2 ISO standards for accreditation purposes. The first one is 17065, ISO 17065, and the other one is ISO 17021. The second standard is supplemented by ISO 22003. Both these standards, I'm referring to 17065 and 17021, they contain similar requirements for certification bodies. They prescribe requirements for how a certification body must operate. They both address issues of preventing conflict of interest. There should be absolutely no conflict of interest. And how to manage customer information. How to qualify personnel, auditor qualification, qualification of personnel working for CBs, even auditor calibration, and many other aspects involved in the certification process. Okay, both these standards have detailed requirements for all these things. And not only that, these 2 standards require an accreditation body to observe auditors in the field. Accreditation bodies do witness audits on site, as well as conduct a detailed off-use review of what? Of policies, procedures, and document control. So that is the office audit. In addition to that, they also have witness audits. Combining the findings from these two, they in fact accredit a certification body. It's a detailed process. But there is a distinct difference between the two, that is 17021 and 17065. The 17021 is applied in, I just mentioned to you, it is applied in combination with ISO 22003. This focuses mainly on the management system, whereas 17065 is more concerned with verifying whether a particular product or service met specified requirement. There's a slight difference in the approach between these two standards. ISO 17021 is basically management system based, management system focused, whereas 17065 is more concerned with verifying product conformity, service conformity to specified requirements. Okay. The majority of GFSI recognized schemes fall under 17065, and there are only two standards that are under 17021. So we are just going to see these things quickly in the next few slides. Again, many of you are familiar with SQF. It's just going to be some kind of repetition. I'm not going to spend much time here. The acronym SQF stands for Safe Quality Food. This is an industry code for food safety. And this is a vertically integrated scheme, and the requirements specified in the core you can apply to various sectors such as production, processing, storage and distribution, retailing, etc. They're all documented in one single code. Again, the food safety categories are assigned based on the type of product manufactured. Again, there are several sectors, dairy sectors, meat sector, beverage industry, etc. They all have been assigned specific food sector codes, food sector categories. SQF has got 3 levels of certification, level 1, 2, and 3. And level 1 is basically focusing on food safety fundamentals, 2 on food safety, and level 3 on food safety and food quality. It's a 2-stage audit. The first stage is document review, wherein an auditor verifies the adequacy of documentation against the requirements of the code. And normally the document review is 1 day. The audit duration is 1 day. And typically stage 2 is 1.5 to 2-day audit duration. So I mean, we'll not go through the details of SQF code. Now let's move on to the next one, which is the BRC Family of Standards. Okay. Unlike the SQF core, the acronym BRC stands for British Retail Consortium. Has different standards for different sectors. Say, for instance, for food manufacturing, it is Global Standard for Food Safety. The current revision is issue 7. Global Standard for Packaging and Packaging Materials. Current revision is issue 5. Global Standard for Storage and Distribution. Global Standard for Agents and Brokers. Global Standard for Consumer Products. Okay, so they have unique standards for each and every sector. And I'm going to provide the details of the Global Standard for Food Safety. This is a single-stage audit wherein the documentation and implementation of the documented procedures will be verified at the same time. This is unlike SQF. Okay. The standard comprehensively addresses food safety and quality requirements, again unlike SQF, where level 3 is food safety and quality, whereas here both food safety and quality are addressed in the same standard. and typically the duration is 2 days. And I'm not going to explain the details of the other standards because of a lack of time. IFS, the acronym stands for International Featured Standards. It is similar to BRC standards. This is a German standard, or rather I think they have got different, like BRC, they have got different standards for different purposes. One for food safety, which is version 6, one for logistics, another for packaging, etc., etc. These 3 standards are meant for food processing, whereas this particular standard, Global GAP, Global Good Agricultural Practices, is a farm assurance standard for vegetables, fruits, livestock production, etc. at the farm level. Again, there are different standards under this scheme. I think there are about 23, 25 standards with 2 different options. One for single producers and another one for multiple producers. The most popular standards are Integrated Farm Assurance Standard, which is otherwise called IFA for fruits and vegetables. Produce Safety Standard, the acronym is PSS, and also they have come up with local standards. For North America, it is Local GAP, okay, North America, IGNA. This is called IGNA. So Global GAP is a business-to-business brand and is not directly visible to consumers. Let me give some information about the 2 ISO 17 or 21 based food safety management system standards. Food Safety System Certification, otherwise known as the FSSC 22000 standard. This is an international standard. This is an ISO quality management system based certification. And the scheme is owned by, rather, it's owned and managed by the FSSC Foundation in the Netherlands. This is also a GFSI benchmark scheme focusing only on food safety. But very recently they have come up with another module that's called FSSCQ, which has incorporated the quality requirements as well. This is a 2-stage audit. Again, in stage 1, an auditor will verify the preparedness for stage 2 and also go through the documentation. And in stage 2, the effectiveness of implementation will be verified. It's a non-prescriptive standard, unlike the ISO 17065 based standards. That's the main difference between these 2 types of standards, 17021 versus 17065. Now, Section B. Section B talks about the implementation of GFSI certification process. In this section, I'll explain how you can successfully implement the chosen GFSI standard through the project management tools and techniques. When an organization decides to implement one of the GFSI certification standards, for instance, you are planning to implement SQF standard, there is often the inclination to charge ahead and start doing something without taking into consideration the best approach for the company because you're in a hurry always. So it is important to have sufficient knowledge of the chosen standard and also HACCP. Okay. Before you even start doing something, the first thing that is required is to have sufficient knowledge of the chosen standard. If you have selected SQF, for example, you should have sufficient knowledge about SQF code. Or if you have chosen BRC food, then you should have good knowledge of the standard. It's not only that, you should be familiar with HACCP as well. Okay. Therefore, if you are new to HACCP or to the standard, you may want to read and gain an understanding of the entire process before you even plan and implement the standard. Also, you'll have to go through the requirement of the standard in detail to familiarize yourself. Without knowing the requirement of the standard, you cannot implement the standard effectively. And you must also know how to plan the project, how to evaluate, and how to build an effective support system, how to identify and train people. These are required in establishing and managing an effective system. So planning is very critical. Planning is very important. And the way to implement the HACCP principles and the chosen food safety standard, it may look quite obvious to you, particularly after attending an initial training, for instance. I think if you're not familiar with the details of the standard, you are taking a training course, for instance. And superficially, it may look quite obvious and quite easy, but you should take into consideration the various alternatives in terms of the structure of the standard and also the HACCP system, and what your overall food safety program will look like. Okay, so this is, you have to think ahead and find out where you are and what your food safety system should look like. And any company that is totally new to food safety management system or even to HACCP techniques will go through the 4 key stages. I have mentioned those 4 stages. Stage 1 is planning and preparation. This is also called project planning phase. Stage 2 is the development stage, that is the project initiation stage or phase. Stage 3 is the project implementation phase. And finally, the last stage is maintaining food safety management system. You have implemented everything, now you are going to evaluate. So that is the project evaluation phase. And this is where the foundation, I'm on stage 1, planning and preparation. This is where the foundations are laid, and it is important to take time to what? To ensure that the appropriate people are identified and trained, because you need the support of a full-fledged team. You need the support of other people as well. So training is important. You need to ensure that you identify appropriate people for implementing the whole project and they are properly trained. Also, you need to establish what support systems are already in place and what needs to be developed. Okay, so this is some kind of gap analysis. And you must consider the most appropriate structure for the company, because each and every company is unique. So if you're the project leader, you need to consider the most appropriate structure for your system. And you need to have a well thought out plan for the entire project, including realistic timetable. This is for development implementation of the food safety management system. Okay? There will be pressure, of course, to do everything overnight, but nothing can be done overnight. So you have to have realistic timetable for the development and implementation of the food safety management system standard. You know, be it SQ, be it BRC. The first thing to do is to consider what you are trying to achieve. So what is your final goal? The path you take to a fully implemented food safety management system will then depend on where you are starting from and the maturity of your existing systems. I'm sure you don't have to start from scratch, because food companies do have, food processing companies do have some semblance of system in their organizations. Something will be running there, actually. So what you need to do is find out where you are and find out where you want to be. And you can also use Deming's plan, do, check, act, the PDCA cycle approach. And then you come up with a project plan. And once you have a sound project plan in place, implement it effectively. So this is about project team awareness. Early involvement of senior management, because they are going to bless the whole project, is fundamental to the effective implementation of food safety management system. As a matter of fact, real commitment can only be achieved if there is complete understanding of what it takes to develop a comprehensive food safety program and how the food safety management system fits into the strategic direction of the company. Senior managers, in fact, do need a basic understanding of the food safety hazards. They don't have to be experts, but I think you must provide them some basic information about food safety hazards and the ways to control them. Once they understand the importance of food safety, they have some knowledge about food safety, then they will be able to provide full support to the whole project. Okay. This kind of understanding is not going to come just by reading books or by attending a food safety briefing session. Okay? But it requires constant input from the project leader. Okay? This can also be undertaken by a reliable consultant if there's no one available in the organization. Okay? So some companies do that. Okay? Open discussion should be encouraged with the end result. What is going to be the end result? You want the senior management to support your project. So that should be your final goal. And once this is done, there will be cascading commitment to everyone in the company. Once the senior management has accepted the project, once they bless the project, then there will be cascading effect throughout the organization. There won't be any resistance at all. Okay. Then, identification of the food safety steering group. So that's what I call food safety team, for instance. They also need some kind of education. They also need some kind of training to implement the whole project. Here you can involve senior managers and departmental heads and things like that. You also need a food safety team leader because each project will have a project manager, so-called project manager. Here it is a food safety team leader. That person will have a key role in the success of the food safety management system. And this particular position or this particular person will be responsible for a few things. Number one, the team leader has to make sure that the team members have sufficient knowledge and expertise. They have the skills and attribute. They have the right skills and attributes. The team leader has to identify individual training needs. And obviously the team, as a team, you'll have to work together, so they should have some experience in working teams. And the team leader has to make sure, as I mentioned, all skills, resources, knowledge, and information needed for the effective implementation of the food safety management system. Okay? And we talked about team behavior. Team behavior within the team must be quite supportive. And it must encourage all members to participate. Okay, no pointing fingers actually. Okay, so it's a different dynamic. In addition to the food safety management team and also senior management, we may need additional personnel. Okay, This may include, say for instance, external help, sometimes suppliers of raw materials, etc., etc. You need to involve them right from the beginning so that they understand the project very well, and then they contribute effectively to the implementation process or implementation project. Now, in one of the previous slides, I just mentioned something about gap analysis. It is important to evaluate the resources and systems in place, compare against the requirements to manage the food safety management system. You are planning to introduce or implement a new system, and that is one of the GFSI standards, for instance. Okay, and obviously you'll be putting up a plan, and before that, you need to review where you are and what you want to be. Your final goal is to achieve certification. So this minus that, A minus B, is the gap analysis. So you have to do gap analysis. And two basic questions might come up. Okay. Number one, what resources and systems need to be in place for the food safety management system to get implemented and also to work? And the second one is, what resources and systems do the organizations currently have? So this is A minus B. The difference between these two are the gaps that will need to be filled. And a third question, how will I get there? That's not going to come up now. That's obvious, because where you want to be, what you want to achieve, that's your final objective. That is GFSI certification. So the most effective way of identifying the gaps is to carry out a baseline audit of the current systems. Just assess where you are today. And this can be done by using auditors with expert knowledge. You may also use consultants. You may also do it yourself. Okay. Following the gap analysis, then you will be preparing a detailed project plan. And I'm going to explain what a project is and what a project plan is. And in many companies, carrying out a detailed gap assessment improvement, I mean, if you're totally new to GFSI standard implementation, obviously you may need gap assessment and what other systems and resources are needed to put that in place. Now, let me define what a project is. So, because I said project management tools and concepts, or rather techniques, will be quite useful in implementing a detailed or comprehensive food safety management system. Okay? A project has, number one, clear objectives based on need. Here the objective is to get certified to one of the GFSI standards. Okay? And of course, all projects will have a beginning and an end. And it will have defined goals and deliverables with timelines. So very specific. Okay. This is called work breakdown structure. You need to identify the various action points and also the timelines required to meet those, to implement those action points. And it will have, projects will have clearly defined scope. And each project will have a sponsor. And that's the first thing, actually, the first point here. Okay. So who is a project sponsor? The project sponsor normally is your company CEO. And that's where you get the blessings of the senior management. Or it could also be, in some cases, in big companies, an operations vice president, operational directors, and things like that. Whoever takes on the role is likely to sit on the senior management team and have budgetary control. Okay, yeah, you need to involve somebody with this kind of responsibility. And the main responsibilities of this person or this position the champion of the project, or obviously you need money. Somebody has to provide funds, and that is the responsibility of this person. Also approve and drive the company food safety policy and food safety management system. Okay? So they need to sign the policy, they need to drive the whole thing. Okay? And appoint a project manager for the team, a project team leader, food safety team leader, for instance. And make sure that adequate resources are available. And they need to establish a reporting structure, because they spend money and they would like to get feedback from the team as to what's going on. Okay? And make sure that the project plan is realistic and achievable. Don't be overambitious. Okay? Prepare a plan that is realistic. And obviously any big changes that you make to that plan must be approved by the project champion. Okay. Then who is a project manager? Project manager is normally a QA director, QA manager, somebody who is driving the whole project. Okay. This role normally is taken by the quality manager. The responsibility centers on ensuring the project plan is drawn up. That's a responsibility of this person. And objectives are achieved within the agreed time scale. Okay. This, of course, requires good project management skills, specifically to lead and direct the team. Okay. Leadership skills. Okay. Produce an achievable project plan. Provide a regular progress report to the project sponsor. Okay? And also liaise with others in the team to ensure that areas of common interest are identified and resources are used effectively in these areas. So these are the responsibilities of a project manager. Okay? And in fact, there may be other improvement projects going on within the business, within the company at the same time. And this is going to be additional. In addition to that, the project manager or the team leader may also include setting up other enhancement programs, such as supplier quality assurance program, facility environmental upgrades, introduction of SPCs and things like that. So you may have to, as a project team leader, you may have to work on several parallel projects, because everything is related to the implementation of the food safety management system. So basically, I think in a project, the first stage is initiation, second stage is planning, then executing or execution, and finally closing it. Okay. Then I'm not going to get into the, we are really running short of time. I'm not going to get into the details of individual stages, what is there in initiation, what is there in planning, etc. Basically, I think, initiate the project, have a project plan, and in a project plan, outline everything. Don't miss out anything. This is done through work breakdown structures and have defined timelines. As a project leader, you make sure that the timelines are met for each and every action point. Okay. I'm just going to provide some quick tips here. Okay. The first one is documentation. Tip 1. Okay. It'll be a good idea to organize documentation into 4 levels, okay, which is the normal ISO practice, actually, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. What is there in level 1? Policies, basically. What is there in level 2? Procedures. Work instructions and forms, that is level 4. In fact, the first level of document is the food safety manual, and it is separate from other procedures. Okay, this is a policy portion. Okay, policy portion should state the company's policy regarding applicable costs. If you have chosen SQF, if you have chosen BRC, you need to state the policy regarding the various requirements of the standard. And here, it's not only the policy you're going to state the responsibility portion as well, the responsibility for creating and implementing the various policies that meet the requirements of the standard. The second level of documentation should be more detailed, and that should address the procedures of an activity. It doesn't have to be very detailed because the third level is work instruction. Work instructions are detailed, and they outline how to establish, or rather how to accomplish a specific task. And the last level of documentation is forms. Okay. Forms are also called, they're also a type of document, and they confirm that a particular task has been accomplished. That's basically a record. To create records, you're going to use forms. Okay. So you prepare the documents, you have effective documentation, you demonstrate that you have good documentation in place, and you also demonstrate that you have implemented the document procedures effectively and maintained the system. Okay. Then, something about food safety manual. Here, this is going to be separate or distinct from developing your food safety system procedures. The purpose is to state, here you are going to state briefly the policies and objectives of the company to achieve food safety in your organization. Organize your food safety manual in such a way that you have major headings in the manual, and this will facilitate easy reference to the various procedures, actually. Always have an index of the document. That's going to be your master list of documents and things like that. Okay. And when you prepare documents, make sure you use simple, easy to understand statements to avoid confusion and to provide clarity to your documentation. Okay. Documents are dynamic. They keep changing all the time. So you'll be making revisions. Revisions should have an effective date, and revised documents should be distributed to those people who hold the initial copies. Okay. Keep records of the revisions made. So this is about documentation. And something about training. You should ensure your company employees are competent, trained well, and continually upgrade their knowledge and skills. You should establish necessary competencies for people involved in various activities, all related to food safety and quality. The training program must cover topics on food safety, GMP, hygiene, CCPs, food defense, etc., etc. And that you should have detailed training programs for new employees, orientation training, that's what they call in many companies, and also ongoing training or refresher training. You know, it's not that you just provide training once and then forget about it subsequently. No, you need to refresh. You need to provide refresher training every year. And in fact, this is a life cycle approach. Training can be viewed from a life cycle approach. First is training needs analysis. Then you provide training. Then you assess the training effectiveness. There are, you can assess training effectiveness by different methods. Normally by monitoring the performance of employees, or after the training you give them a test, things like that. And of course you need to maintain records. Okay. Let me move on to the next section, which is pitfalls in the implementation of food safety management systems, actually. Okay. These are some of the common pitfalls. Lack of management support. Okay. If your project is not going to be supported by senior management, it's a sure formula for failure. Okay. When you are seeking senior management support, you should be fully prepared with facts and figures because they may have a lot of questions. So you should be fully prepared with facts and figures as to why you are getting involved in this project. Okay, so what are the details? What are your goals? What benefits the company will get? Okay, what will be the cost saving? What will be the budgetary consideration, etc., etc. So you should be prepared with all these things when you seek the support of the senior management. Okay, and obviously the company culture is normally driven from top. Okay, for a company to create a strong safety culture, I'm talking about food safety culture, all employees need to know that there's senior management. Okay, people down the line, they need to know that senior management views food safety as a key element of the business and not just another project. Okay. The second one is a failure to link project objectives with corporate goals. Okay. In a few cases, project scoping is done at the local or functional level, at a different level, lower level. So if it is done at that level, it's not going to succeed. Okay. So always you must try to relate food safety goals with the company goal or business goals. Then I think there is every chance the project will succeed. Okay. And the last thing you want to do is to spend time and resources improving a product, and finally you come to know the project is not going to take off. No, that's not what you want. Okay. And the third one is team makeup, the composition of the team. You need to make sure that you select people from different functions. Then it's more comprehensive. Then there will be expert inputs from different sections. That will really help you to achieve your objectives. Okay? And other common pitfalls may include inadequate performance measures. So you have to set performance measures for your project. At each and every stage, like defining timelines for various activities, you must set performance measures. If your performance measures are not quite adequate, quite effective, then the project is going to fail. And ineffective project management. Okay? If you're not a good project manager, if you're not a good leader, then probably there is a possibility of your project getting failed. Okay, or many times ineffective documentation. So these are some pitfalls that you may encounter during the implementation of the project. And the last section is, of course, I think I'll take only a few more minutes, your rights as an auditee. All GFSI schemes require certification bodies to provide a copy of the contract. Okay, basically, I think that's your right. You need to get a copy of the contract from the certification body. And the contract should include as a minimum, number one, the scope of the audit, okay, two, the fee structure, conditions under which certificates are issued or withdrawn or suspended, and the procedures for complaints, appeals, and disputes. So some of your rights and complaints and disputes, for instance, okay. Certification bodies are required to document procedures for handling complaints, disputes, and appeals. When a supplier wants to register a complaint, when I say supplier, it is the, I'm talking about auditees or clients. They have got every right to register a complaint. Also, they have got the right to appeal or dispute a decision made by either the certification body or even by the auditors during audits. Okay, so these are some of your rights, and thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions now, please feel free to ask questions. Thank you very much again.